welcome to the podcast, Disrupt Education Alley. How are you?
I'm good. It's a good day. Another life is random. Still jumping out of planes
Yep.
in the wintertime in northern Wisconsin. That's still happening for those of you who are wondering. And also I am currently doing construction on a suite in the family's bed and breakfast. We're working on our biggest suite. So, just all the random projects and podcasting with you and
Well.
our guests.
Now, I don't know, Robert Peppo is our guest today. Robert, how are you? And that's number one. And number two, have you jumped out of planes? Because I know you're in the military.
I am good. Thank you for asking. Appreciate being here. And I have jumped out of planes, actually not in the military. Lots of helicopters though.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Got
Tons
it.
of helicopter operations. But I was not airborne qualified in the military. No.
Ah, got it. All right. So there's a story there. But yes, we have Robert Peppo. Wow, I don't even know where to begin. Robert and I met last year at a mock interview thing that we arranged for our students just to get them used to interviewing with professionals. And then this year, Robert was doing our keynote. And in that speech, I was like, wait, whoa, he's a podcaster. You've done a lot of different things. You talked a little bit about your educational path and gave students a lot of advice. So we're going to pick your brain today. That was a very brief introduction. So can you give our listeners a bigger introduction of who you are and what you're all about?
Yeah, of course. I'll do my best to keep it streamlined and then we can get into it.
You have a wild, awesome background, by the way. I'm just prefacing that. No pressure.
I appreciate that. I'll try and live up to it. So my path has been non-traditional, to say the least, in nearly everything I've done, including education, which we'll get into for sure. But most of it started with kind of like the high school, trying to get into college type of thing. I was an athlete, right? So that took the forefront of my life. Got a full ride scholarship to college, but never completed college. I wish I had you disruptors back then and possibly could have not dropped out 3 times, which was interesting because you could look at my life and say it's pretty successful. I tend to think that it is for sure by every metric, but the way that I got there is not traditional whatsoever. That includes joining the military, getting thrown into the family business, which I have since taken on and has flourished, but getting thrown in, not expecting it, dealing with my father having cancer, and then open heart surgery, and really learning the hard way through that. But experience to me has been one of the best teachers. And I think that's something that we'll get into today, talking about my path in education and all that. So that's kind of a very brief introduction through school, Army, military deployments, and then taking on business with no, traditional school training in business, no MBA, but crushing it, to say the least. And then rolling that into other things as well.
Right.
Finding opportunities by doing, basically.
Yeah. So I'm going to give a shout out here real quick, Allie, because it's Peppo Subs. And if you've never had it, it's the guts. It makes them, I'm from Indiana, and I found out about the sub shop that was a family business. Okay, I'm going to send you one, Allie, because they're amazing. So I'll just start there. But go ahead, Allie. What do you want to ask Robert? Because you got a blank slate here.
I do. Okay, so non-traditional path in education, dropped out of college 3 times. So Peter and I have talked about this on other episodes about how the statistic for people graduating traditional colleges at like a high point is like 40%, I think, after like 6 or 7 years. I forget the exact stat. Don't quote me on that, anybody listening, but it's not over 50. I know that.
Right.
But all that, like, walk us through a little bit, about this untraditional path and, like maybe what made your decisions in the moment and how, like, I like how you said, experience and doing is the greatest teacher. So, kind of let our listeners know about that path a little bit more in depth.
Although I love learning, I think the traditional school, how it's laid out, and even, I mean, for me, that was, 20 and 30 years ago, going through, grade school into high school and then college. It didn't resonate with me because I was that person that needed to apply what I was doing right now in the thing that I'm doing. And I couldn't find that connection. Okay. So I feel like I had ADHD, but I don't know if that was a combination of I was an athlete, I wanted to be outside, and I couldn't figure out what the traditional education system was doing for me because it didn't apply to my sports. It didn't apply to my dad's business. I couldn't have this thing to apply mathematics to, or whatever I was learning, chemistry or whatever, just didn't speak to me. And so maybe because of that, I didn't connect the dots and find its importance. But I did so later on, maybe by default, because I've always been a motivated type of individual, knowing I'm going to be successful. I just didn't know what that was and how that looked early on. And I didn't have anything to show me that. I didn't have classes like the entrepreneurial classes that we have today, that I've been, thankful to be a part of with, Stagg and Sandberg and Andrew and Providence Catholic, where I went. We didn't have any of that, so unless you either had, your family business or something, I was kind of lost in that, what is school doing for me? I was good at sports and I had a lot of friends, right? So I already knew I fit in and connected and can do things. But the traditional path was, go to college, get a degree. How can you not go to college? You have to get good grades. I'm like, I'm trying. I just don't like it. It's not that I don't try. I'll try. I'll put my energy and try up against anybody else's in anything. So it wasn't that, but no one could kind of relate to me in that. So I always felt kind of, am I not smart, or am I on my own path? And it was this dichotomy I was fighting with myself to find that. And I didn't find it till a little bit late when I did find a mentor, thankfully. But throughout it was pretty up and down and tumultuous, to say the least.
I think, you mentioned a mentor, and again, I kind of know the path because we had a lot of conversations around your speech to the students, and you just did some Shark Tank work with Andrew. I saw that was awesome. So let's go then beyond. Let's talk about those 3 quitting times at post-secondary at college, and then maybe how that ran into the military. There's a lot of labeling there that I can hear you talking about. Like there's only one path, and I think it's starting to change. And I think Allie and I are going to start in this new year to really start talking about what are the things that schools are starting to do, and some schools are doing it faster than others. But back then, I'm feeling that it was 4 years or no years, man. You're just a nobody. So talk us through those. Okay, you attempted even going, and you did go to college 3 times. Talk about that.
Well, I wanted to fit in, and I didn't want anybody to think I was stupid, right? And I hate to use that word, but it's how I felt. That was my story, right? And so that kind of led into why I worked hard. But I'll go back, so I got a full ride scholarship to college for football. And so I'm like, cool, I'm qualified, right? That was my validation almost. But I'm like, but dang, I got to do school now, right? Now I got to pass and stay in and stay eligible. And it was scary, legit. And I never told anybody that. I played it off because I was cool. I was an athlete, right? I was all state, getting full ride. This is great. Except for I knew that reality was coming, right? And that is what happened. Excelled at football again, and then didn't get good grades. And so I was like, okay, what do I do? So I gave up my full ride scholarship. Was at the same time my dad got cancer and couldn't be in the family business, right? So that first time was almost like my escape. All right. But I knew what was going to happen. Okay. And so, but luckily I was able to use that, and it was legit for sure, because I wanted to make sure my family was taken care of. And I knew I was an athlete, so I can go back, right? I'll get re-recruited. I'll play again. That was my thought pattern. And so I went to Joliet Junior College to play again and also get re-recruited out. But there we go. Had to do school again. All right. And so I took some basic courses, and I got through a few and then struggled with a few. And I was like, man, what is this? I know I can do this. I can apply myself in my business. I can apply myself on the field. why isn't this part working? Maybe I didn't have the teachers that maybe connected with me and understood that. Maybe I just needed to get past that first year or two. I'm not sure. But when I realized I wasn't going to be getting good grades again, and I just wasn't committed, part of it was I wasn't committed, right? So I always know there's a sacrifice on your own part that goes along with that, but it wasn't resonating with me. And so I stopped playing at Joliet Junior College and then tried Moraine Valley and thought, I'm going to give this one more chance and let me see if I could just pick up one course. Let me get through one course and I'll do the next one. And I did. It was like a entry-level business course because I was like, I just got to take something I like. And I know, let me see if I can start there. And I did pass it, but I realized, nah, that was forced. It took everything out of me to just get through this course. Mm-hmm. Now I know my path is entrepreneurship, right? So my football career stayed a little longer with arena football in that, but I didn't pursue it any longer. So I knew entrepreneurship is the road I needed to go, right? Create my own destiny and no one can tell me no, kind of. I didn't know back then how that was going to look or what it was going to be. But I knew as long as I can, create that world around me where I thrive in, now I can start to do something without any traditional things or anybody else holding me back. Not that it held me back. I just, whatever that was, I just couldn't find my path through that. I always wondered if I could get into like the advanced classes where you could work on building a business, in a master's level class or something. If I would have succeeded then, I just couldn't get there because of that for some reason, that was my story, my lot in life early on for sure.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about even your persistence in trying to find a way speaks to, your desire to learn and grow. It wasn't the system for you. And as you were talking, I was thinking about, we did an episode with an 18-year-old, Olivia Barnes, a few months ago. And it's interesting because she is doing self-directed learning I forget the name of the
it's
organization.
Actually Praxis. I'm wearing this shirt.
It's funny. Yeah. So Praxis, but it was interesting on the episode, she talked about how she actually then is like partnering with a college or university to do sports. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that didn't exist back when it sounds like you needed that. Like I'm sitting here listening to this, sports was your modality and it's like what made sense. And that was like your passion, but school didn't fit that mold. And I'm just like trying to think, if you were today in that same spot, what that would look like for you if you could have done more self-directed learning rather than try to fit yourself into the mold. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested now, it sounds like you give back to the community through your work. What kind of message do you share with young people, with your own experience and kind of how does that message translate now that you've learned these lessons and started a business and broken through the mold and really kind of, it sounds like you've really found your way to learn and do. And I just think that's so valuable. So I'd be really curious on how you share that.
So 100%, I feel like if I wasn't me and my mentality, which I do feel is rare, it's not only unique to me, but it's rare in that if it wasn't how my mindset is, I feel like I would have went down the very wrong path. Okay. And I don't want another kid to feel like I did and then not have a family business or not have a mentor that then puts them in the right direction. Because it could have went the wrong way real quick for me. If I didn't find that next thing to put my energy and passion into, like I did with football or business or whatever it was, it could go really wrong really quickly. And I don't want that to happen to anybody just because they weren't good at school. And I'm around a lot of younger-ish people from entry-level employees, but also in the military, right? So the military is filled with these 17 to 23 age group people that are looking for the next thing for them. Maybe they needed to go to the military. Maybe they wanted to try something else. Maybe they didn't have another option. Maybe they didn't have family. Who knows what? But I've seen it all. Now, getting through it and going through the ranks in the Army, I've seen it. And they all ask me. And now it's my duty to give back that you are not alone. And it is okay. And there's plenty of things for you to succeed at. You just got to find that path. And my job is to help you find that path. Because if I didn't, who knows what could have happened, but since I did, I can do all these other things. My opportunities now are almost limitless. I mean, like this today with us, going to the schools, giving back. So just yesterday, Monday and Tuesday, I was doing the Shark Tank, got to talk to them. And then offline after, the kids were coming up to me asking me these things as well, right? Because they resonate with these small parts of the story. So to answer your question, my duty is to give back for sure. And I'm doing that as much as possible. That's another reason why I started podcasting. My podcast is all about the real life, what I had to go through. And some of it's not pretty. That's why it's uncensored. But that's real life. And that's what it was to me. I had to learn the hard way. Mm-hmm. And that self-education, you see all my books behind me. I have another full bookcase here. That was my learning. I had to equate what I might have learned in college that I didn't and level the playing field with self-directed learning, as you guys talked about. Myself for, 5 years straight, every single day, just reading. But I found the books that resonated with me, right? So it was the same thing. Once I found my thing that I liked, something I was engaged in, it was easy.
Yep. That's a couple of things. Was it Robert Peppo Uncensored? I want to give like a shout
Uncensored, out. Yeah. Uncensored with Robert Peppo.
With Robert Peppo. Yep. And we'll put that actually in the links as well, because it's really cool. I mean, I've turned on to it since you were doing the speaking engagement. I mean, it's real life stuff, and it's really great. I'm kind of the same way as you, especially when we're talking about like reading, right? Like I always over the shoulder, I have Deep Work back there, and it's just a bunch of books. My books are kind of off to the side here. I hated reading in high school. I'm going to guess you didn't like reading in high school. I want to dig into that. Why? What happened there?
Yeah, I don't think I read a single book in high school. I had them. I would flip them open. But I wasn't engaged. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I had a really good English teacher and a speech teacher, two that stood out to me. And we had some books to read. And I told them, I'm like, I can't retain the knowledge for some reason. Mm-hmm. Like I read the page, I'll see myself reading it or get through the chapter and be like, what did I read? And it's just something in me that is, I can remember anything if I like it, engage, or I'm interested in it. Then I got it. It's locked in. But if it's not, maybe it's just, my mind is pretty focused on one thing, and that's why I can excel in the things that I do. I'm not sure. But I don't think I read a single full book in high school. And then when I got out, the first book I ever read was a business book that was given to me by a guy. He owns a big franchise company that helps businesses franchise. And I went to him, I'm like, I want to be successful. I want to work with you. And he's like, well, slow down, buddy. You're like 23 and I work with these Fortune 500 companies. But I got the opportunity to meet him. So I did. And he said, hey, start with reading my book and come back to me and we'll talk. When I read that first line, because I'm like, oh, this is it, right? These are the answers. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And I read it. I'm like, oh my God, there's so much I don't know. But it was a subject that I liked, right? So I found what I liked. And so my theory now is there's so many books in the world. Just find one that might resonate with you, and it'll start to open your doors, open your mind, right? And so that's just what I did. So I found things that I was interested in, business success, money, things like that. And I would just flip it open. And if that page resonated with me, I would read it. Mm-hmm. Because if that page could grab me, the rest of the book was probably pretty good. The cover is supposed to get you, right? The write-up is supposed to get you, all right? But if that middle content page is going to engage me, I'm good. Nice. And that's how I've picked. Yeah.
I just like that you're owning, like who you are and how you learn and how you grow, and that it really is a timeless skill. And it doesn't have to be traditional. It doesn't have to be the system. Like Peter is still, a quote unquote traditional teacher. You're non-traditional though, because you just teach in a traditional system. Right. And I left the traditional model to pursue other avenues. But I was I'm like the antithesis to you. Like I'm just naturally, like school's easy. It was easy for me. I loved it. I loved learning. Like the system worked for me. I'm like your cookie cutter, like straight A student, right? But and then went back and like taught in the system and enjoyed it. But as I like year after year, I realized how much it could kind of do more or help more students. And I could only capture like the kids that were really in front of me, right? And like move that needle forward. And I didn't feel like I was doing enough change or talking about like how much it's not serving students beyond like what I could control, which is why we have this podcast, which is why we have these conversations. So what I really love that you're sharing here and that so many people can take away from is that like the learning doesn't stop just because you're not in the classroom. And it's like, it's finding your modality. It's finding like what you resonate with, because then it's like this whole other world opens.
100%.
You can just like go, you know, in so many different ways. So I'd be interested in what is something you are kind of learning now, and how are you learning it? It doesn't have to be a book, but like, you know, like what is something that, you know, you're kind of, it's beyond school. It's stuff that you're taking the challenge on, and like kind of like what got you interested in it, and like why are you wanting to learn more about it?
I want to touch on one thing that you mentioned about you doing really well in school, but you know, maybe I didn't. Let's just say that as an example. I don't want to take away anybody who does excel in school. I will never be that person that's like, no, you don't have to go to school. You know, no, school is definitely for some people. They can excel in it and it's awesome and they'll thrive and they'll do great. Right. I don't ever want to, you know, so I tell the same people, this is my unique story. Right. So take what I'm saying is, and don't try and mimic mine. You can take bits and pieces of it. Right. But this is quite unique to me. And so I can appreciate people like you who excelled in it. And I think it has a place, and we can get into that. But I just wanted to hit on that to make sure no one gets it misconstrued that I don't support people who want to take that route for sure. But the things that I'm learning now are very much like high level, next level business stuff. And what that means is I'm looking to my mentors who are really crushing it in business, giving myself something to work towards. Okay. So school didn't give me that. So I'm building it into myself. Okay. Since I'm the owner and CEO of Peppo's and the things that I do, I need something to push and pull me. Okay. So I curate that outside life by feeding into my social media or the podcasts that I listen to or the people that I look up to. So my learning now is still books for sure. But definitely much more specific podcasts, specific audiobooks, things like that are going to open my mind and keep pushing that limit, because I kind of got myself to almost where I can max out with what I have and what I've done. My whole next thing, which is a pretty lofty goal, I spoke about it at my keynote, it's going to take a whole nother change to get to there, which I'm working on currently. But when you get older and are in the position that I'm in, something else needs to, I don't know if it needs to be a goal or a person or a thing or a mentor. It needs to be that thing that you continue to work towards. Because sometimes people ask me, why do you still do this? Shouldn't you just be happy with what you've done so far? And I am, for sure. But again, just like early on, there's something in me that tells me I have to do more, right? I feel like I'm meant to do this thing, this next thing, probably to make up for and show that, you know, that wasn't going to be the end of my story, right? It's not going to define me because I wasn't good at school. Traditionally, I barely graduated high school, right? You know, maybe I got a chip on my shoulder and have to prove it. Maybe I'm proving it to myself. I'm not sure. But I always put something out there to look up to and work towards. And that keeps me honest. And that keeps me kind of working and never ending the study, which I'll never give up now that I've known what it's done for me, for sure.
Yeah. I like it. You have a huge intrinsic motivation, which is something that I look for in youth. And if they don't have it, I try to figure it out. I mean, really, that's why I teach business in the traditional system. It's not, I mean, like Ali said, I'm not a traditional teacher in a traditional system. I push lines, I piss people off, I do things differently. Grades really don't matter to me, honestly. I want to see like effort and I want to see like failures and successes and learning from anything and everything, and it's messy. So with that being said, what's interesting is, you know, we've all went to high school years ago, and I'm just going to focus on the secondary part here. And I was just having this conversation with a colleague of mine today, like when students are like, you know, we have some early grads that are, you know, they're done or they don't need the credits. They just stop, like literally just stop. And back, I don't know about you, but back in my day, like that was unheard of. You would not do that. Like you would at least kind of like, all right, I'll get the C or try for the C or whatever. But kids are literally just shutting down, like no homework. I mean, I don't give homework, but not working on projects. Obviously, there's phones involved and different things like that, which is disheartening to me because I literally am trying to help students understand, number one, what do you want to do? And number two, how can you have school work for you, right? And we're still in boxes. So with all that, now we're in 2023, and you have an opportunity to build a school, a secondary school. We'll call it Robert Peppo's Academy, right? What would that look like? What would be some of the major things that knowing what you've went through now and what kind of learner you are, what would you do? What would be some of the basics of that school, or what would it look like?
First of all, I'm having you two on my board. All right. so we can make this thing right. Okay. That's step one, right? Get the right people involved and you can build anything. So number one, get the right people involved who think the same way and that can build something cool like that, right? So bring that part of traditional education in because it has worked in its own way, right? So it does take this thing, right? Learning is essential. And these are the building blocks to learn, right? School teaches you how to learn things and it allows you to learn some things, okay? So step one, have that model in the system, okay, that traditional education can bring, right? But number two, really think about how other people are going to succeed. Okay. So it can't just be grades, right? Maybe it's not homework at all. Or some parts of each of these. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the military does some things really good. They have a bunch of standards of how they grade things and how you'll get opportunities. And there's a bunch of different boxes to check. Some are physical, some are mental, some are what you've done, some are what you're going to do, some are outside the military. And they grade you on all these things and put you at like a promotional list or whatever. That's why I succeeded, because within a system that I might create in my school, you will have to go through all of these things. You know, high school for me was, these were my grades and they were low and that's what I got. I won a state championship. I was a starter. I was getting a full ride scholarship, but I barely got past. Like there was nothing else judged, right? Didn't matter that everybody liked me, that I helped this kid because he was bullied. And because I was a star athlete, he stopped getting bullied, right? Where was that on the judge scorecard, right? Nobody talks about that part of it. But it was a massive thing. And he thanks me to this day still. And so it's like, there's all these other things that I would curate with it. And a lot of them would be what you're doing, your interpersonal skills. Okay. Your teamwork, your effort, your ideas. Okay. People have extremely great ideas, but sometimes they take money. So maybe they don't get to do them, but the idea is fantastic. So maybe that person is creative, right? What about art? Okay. What about all these things that could, go into it? So my grading system would probably be something pretty interesting and different, and be person by person basis, even if at all possible. But where I saw so many different people, fall short is just through that grading. So grading system number one, okay, needs to be changed. And then the open atmospheres of maybe getting outside. Cause I wanted to be outside. Every time I was in school, I'd be dreaming about getting outside, doing something, right? So just, different learning environments, right? Stimulating environments. They're better now. So the class I was at in Shark Tank, they have like round seats and you can sit over here. There's different levels of table. I didn't have none of that. Right. Mm-hmm. So we are getting better. Right. So we'll take all these elements that give you this just more natural, more free flowing thing, just like life would normally be, and incorporate all those things. That's what I would do. And I would bring in all the best elements of, Tesla and Apple and all the things that they've done from all these great companies and include it and say, why do those companies work so well? Then mimic it with, why does traditional education work well for those that succeed in it? Okay, let's take the best parts of all these things and build it. That's kind of how you would build any company, I suppose. The blueprints are out there for the things that work. It's just whether you can seek them, find them, and then apply them. Right. It's
like such a great vision that you cast with this. And this is a totally different answer. I love this question because we get literally such different answers. I always think like some point someone's going to say the same thing and they never do. It's so good. But what you're casting, with your unique experience, and how it's like I was picturing like this whole person, but like every person becomes like a whole person through this vision. And I think that's really just a beautiful model to cast. And it's not about a grade, it's not about a score, and it's about developing you. And that's what I was really picturing as you were talking about that. And that yes, there are standards, but it's like once you check that standard, let's move you forward. And it sounds like in some of your own schooling you were like held back, not like in terms of like not being challenged enough, and like you weren't meeting whatever the standard was at that school, but they didn't give you anything else to kind of work towards. So it was like, well, this is all I can contribute in this system. So what you're describing is a really beautiful vision for what school could be like in the future, and taking the best of the best and incorporating it into a model that could really build this great atmosphere. So,
yeah. And if I can add to that, the young generation nowadays, seeing people explode on social media or win at life in these other ways that maybe traditional school doesn't lead you into that path of a social creator or a content creator or the back end of it in the production side of it. But they're interested in it because it's 24/7. And so how do you get that out of them? Like I had to get it out of myself to see what I was going to be good at, because there's no reason I can succeed and do the things that I've done in my personal life while having been labeled or looked on paper as nearly a failure, to be quite honest. How do we close that gap and bring that together? We can't go back and do it for me, but we can sure do it now. So yeah, I love the conversation about this.
It's very interesting because I think, Allie and I have had a lot of conversations about how we do things in the classroom. She's a science teacher by trade. I'm a business teacher by trade. So when you said chemistry, dude, you're in trouble. No, I'm just kidding. But I think it's interesting because the hardest thing that we're dealing with right now is actually helping students believe they can do something crazy and incredible in the system. It's a mindset change. And I get it. Some teachers are very strict and very by the book. They may go like the period right before they come to mind that, the teacher is just like, write this down, memorize it, go, which it is what it is. And that does work for about 15-20% of the students, and I don't want to discount that. But when you give that kid the opportunity, they're just like, I'll just do that later, right? And I think that's an interesting thing. But you mentioned there was a speech teacher and an English teacher that you thought were good. What made them good? I want to know, what were the qualities? It's interesting. I had a speech teacher that, I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but she was amazing, and she actually changed my life later on because of the things that I was looking back. But yeah, I want to pick your brain a little bit about those teachers here before we wrap up and get some of the information from you. But yeah, what were these teachers like? Why did you think they were awesome?
Yeah, I think very much like you two, they're open, they're understanding, they're not as rigid in the system. They, and there's a lot of teachers out there that are great. I hear it often, from the people I've worked with me, who they like and all this. But for me, those were the two that stood out that I would say understood and said, it's okay, he doesn't get that. Mm-hmm. Let's let him succeed in this way, right? Speech class, so get up there. I can improvise and go off my head, no problem. But you just mentioned a couple minutes ago memorizing things. I couldn't do it. And so that wasn't going to work for testing purposes, traditional testing purposes, and all that. And then when you have that teacher that can say, okay, well, you know what, do your best. This is what we're going to do. And I know how you do things. So go ahead and, just doing this little tweak to allow myself to get a grade in there that makes, for one, giving a kid confidence, that can go a long way, right? For me, for sure it would. Because the whole time I'm like, man, I'm failing. What am I going to do? And one teacher says I'm good. Maybe I am good, right? And that's all it takes. And I think that's all a young person needs sometimes. So whether they were just good because they were, getting me to a place I could get to, or they were, bringing out the strong suits of everybody, I'm not sure. But I'm thankful that it wasn't so rigid and that they were able to kind of bring that out of me. by the way in which they teach, and I think it's incredibly important to understand your students and see who has strong suits in different ways and bring it out. And that it's extremely important for sure.
We're going to wrap up here, but before we get into your connections, Allie, I got to ask, any final thoughts here?
There's a lot in your story, and I'm going to encourage everyone to listen to your podcast, because I'm sure you drop like way more specifics. But what I keep coming back to, and like what you said at one point, you're like, maybe I had a chip on my shoulder. Maybe I'm doing this to prove to myself that I'm not a failure. And I think that, well, one, you're not. Yeah. Not that you need me to validate that, but I'm just saying that for those out there that feel like the system failed you, or that you are a failure, I encourage you to reach out to Robert and others, and just realize that you're not alone, and that this system isn't designed to kind of, it's a model. It doesn't work for everyone, and that, it doesn't define your success. It doesn't define who you are or what you can be, and that it's never too late to kind of grow into the type of learner that you can be. So thank you for sharing all of that. And as I think it's really going to resonate with a lot of people, and more people need to hear your story.
I appreciate that. I hope so. There's no straight line to success, right? It doesn't have to happen at the right time that you think it does, but it will happen if you stay to it, So
yeah, and I can attest. And I got to throw this out there for one of my colleagues, because when we were doing the interviews, one student actually reached out and asked about working at in your organization at Peppo's, and he's working there now. So reaching out and asking, that's something else that you hit the head on, especially in that speech, and it really resonated with that young man. So let's throw out there, how can people connect with you? Just go ahead and restate the podcast again, and because you've got a lot of great content out there, Robert.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so the podcast is Uncensored with Robert Peppo, live on all platforms. Instagram is my main social channel, so Robert _J _ Peppo, Peppo. Check me out. If you have anything that you need to talk about, ask for mentors, anything, I'll lead you in the right direction. This is my life now. It's what I do. But I just appreciate being on here. So yeah, I'm not hard to find on any of the social medias. So if you find me out there, appreciate you. I appreciate being on here. All this, it's great. I hope we can do it again.
Absolutely, and thank you so much. And I do want to throw one last shout out there. Robert had about, I don't know how many, I'm going to say maybe 75 to 90 students at 8 a.m. on the edge of the, not one of them were looking down on it. So if you're an educator and you need somebody to speak, you may want to reach out here for those admin and educators as well. For Robert, Allie, I'm Peter Hostrawser. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Disrupt Education Podcast. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrawser or Allie Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.